Who really shaped the foundations of modern Israel? Was it the governments we know, or something far more secretive? The Rothschilds, a name whispered in the corners of history, a family shrouded in wealth, power, and mystery. What if I told you that much of the modern state of Israel might not exist as we know it without them? The story begins in the late 19th century, a period of rising nationalism, of empires in decline, and a growing movement for a Jewish homeland. Theodor Herzl, often called the father of modern Zionism, had a vision, but visions need backers. And behind the scenes, one family quietly became the financial backbone of the Zionist movement. But how deep did this influence go? Was it merely financial, or was there something far more deliberate at play? The Rothschilds were no strangers to influence. By the late 1800s, their wealth stretched across Europe, banking empires in France, England, and Austria. Some historians suggest that their involvement in the establishment of Israel went beyond funding. Baron Edmund de Rothschild, a name often overshadowed by the family legacy, personally funded early Jewish settlements in Palestine. Villages, farms, vineyards. Entire communities were established under his guidance. But here's the question. Was this philanthropy, or a strategic move to cement influence over a future nation? Letters from Edmund to his managers reveal, a meticulous attention to control, not just money, but decisions. Who lived where, which crops were planted, even the style of governance. Some say this shaped Israel's very economic blueprint. By the 1920s and 30s, Rothschild-backed organizations owned vast tracts of land in Palestine. And when the British Mandate took over, the Rothschilds' influence didn't wane. It quietly adapted, making sure they remained, indispensable. Think about this. A single family, quietly shaping settlements, funding infrastructure, guiding economic decisions, while the world watched. How much of modern Israel's early development can truly be separated from the Rothschilds' hand? Fast forward to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. The world remembers political leaders, armies, declarations. But the financial scaffolding, the networks of support, the behind-the-scenes strategists, often remain invisible. Some scholars argue that without decades of Rothschild backing, the fledgling state might have faced insurmountable obstacles. Even Israel's early economic policies, its banking systems, were influenced by the precedents set by the Rothschilds. It's not conspiracy theory. It's history. Documents exist. Investments were made. Settlements thrived under guidance. Yet mainstream narratives rarely acknowledge this influence. Why? Was this just philanthropy? Or was it the quiet building of power and legacy? Some suggest the Rothschilds viewed Israel as a long-term strategic project, a foothold in a geopolitically critical region, a place where influence could be sustained for generations. And the question becomes, even today, how much of their legacy persists in modern Israeli institutions, in banking, in land ownership, in politics? Maps and ownership records hint at connections that are subtle, yet undeniable. Consider this. By the mid-20th century, the Rothschild influence extended to education, agriculture, and even security sectors. They weren't just donors, they were architects, quietly steering the future of a nation. It's easy to dismiss this as history, distant, irrelevant, but history has a way of leaving traces. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Some researchers claim that the Rothschilds' network may still play a subtle role today, guiding policy, influencing finance, shaping the infrastructure of modern Israel, and perhaps the wider Middle East. But this influence isn't public. It's hidden, woven into the fabric of institutions, quietly persistent. And this raises a question that few dare to ask. How much of today's Israel, its economy, its governance, its very land distribution, can be traced back to decisions made by a single family over a century ago? We often think of power in terms of armies and elections, but real influence, real control, is subtler. It's in who funds whom, who owns the land, who sets the economic rules, and who remains behind the curtain, unseen. Edmund himself once wrote that the future belongs to those who prepare it quietly, patiently, deliberately, and perhaps the Rothschilds took that lesson to heart. So the next time you think about modern Israel, think beyond headlines, beyond politics, and ask yourself, how much of what we see today was quietly shaped a century ago by a family whose influence still echoes through the corridors of power, and the story is far from over. What's happening behind the scenes now might be the next chapter in a saga that began with a single Rothschild and a vision no one else dared to see. The hidden hands of history are always watching,